to the Andrew. And welcome to Tom and Conrad, our friends low these 19 years. I'm so glad they're joining us on this day of Thanksgiving, although there's a lot going on today. Certainly, nothing inspires grateful hearts and joy like music does. Welcome those of you who are joining us for the first time this morning from Unionville Presbyterian Church. So that's where Gord Timbers used to be. You remember our friend Gord? So Allison knows Gord well. Yeah. And then Barbara. Welcome, Barbara, who I met last Sunday morning at the shula that was held in this space. I've got a nephew here from Regina, too. But you know the way 25-year-olds are. He'll kind of make his way in here. But he and his friend moved a lot of chairs this morning, so they've already paid for their dinner. For those of you who are with us for the first time, your participation will be invited, and you will be cued on the screen, so whether it is a responsive reading or a hymn. I share with you words now from Richard Wagamese. Hi, Tristan. The boys from Regina. Welcome. I share with you words by Richard Wagamese as a means of inviting us into this sacred practice this morning. I raise the pipe of my being to the rising sun in openness and humility. With my eyes closed, I give thanks to the life giver and ask for the strength to be humble through the course of this day. I smudge myself with sacred medicines and give thanks for the blessings that are already present in my life. I ask for nothing. I only offer thanks. Then, in gratitude and humility, I enter the journey of each day. This is wakefulness. This is becoming. This is sacred ceremony. And I am made more by this daily practice. Let us pray. We gather in the sanctuary of earth and sky, cradled by trees, met by clouds, doused in sunshine. We gather around a table, a symbol of provision and community, a reminder of our identity as guest, as beloved, among a circle of friends. We gather as those whose pantries are sufficiently full, whose homes are sufficiently warm. We gather in a space filled with memories, histories, and still possibilities for the rebirth of generosity and justice, creativity and compassion. We gather to be born again into a vision that honors the sacred balance of seed time and harvest, gleaning and giving not just for us, but for all. Let this vision reshape us, body, mind, and spirit, so that we might truly know ourselves to be a parable of God's grace. May it be so. Amen. The hymn is on the screen. So I had been in this business for quite a few years, like a lot of years, like probably 30 years. I was in this business of investigating what is at the heart of our sacred text, and what I like to say, what are those deep archetypes that we find within them that we share with those of every sacred tradition. And it was about 5 years ago when I guess we were doing Lent and we were in the wilderness, and suddenly I went, like, the land is a character in this story. In fact, the land is the major character in the story. And even in the land, there are archetypes. So there are mountains where we understand that we are closer to that which is sacred and cosmic. And then there are valleys, and we all know about what happens in valleys, and we have experienced those things in our lifetime. And then there are deserts, and we also know how to talk about the desert times in our lives. And all of these things, and then we can move to the New Testament, and we think about what tools that Jesus used to speak about how we understand our relationship with one another, how we understand our relationship with the sacred mystery. And again, there was no pointing to the sky. There was always pointing to the ground, to the lilies of the field. Okay, sky, birds in the air, mustard seeds, ground that is good to build on. Don't build your house on sand. Build it on a rock, right? And suddenly I went, these just aren't add-ons, PSs. They are, in fact, central to the story. I don't know why it took me so long to just name that. Anyway, so this morning, as we think about how the land and this harvest season, the land is central to the story, I've chosen to kind of rewrite, add, amend this amazing passage from the book of Deuteronomy. So the people of Israel have been liberated from slavery. We are always wanting to be liberated from slavery. There are always prisons from which we can be liberated, and those journey out of those prisons is never an easy one. And so the people have been liberated from living in a land under the Pharaoh, under the empire, where there was no concern for them and their livelihood and their understanding of what it meant to be human. And their God was taking them to another land. And in this land, they were invited to be a parable for the nations. They were invited to live out of this deep covenant relationship of love and generosity. So it's like, this is how it's done. It's not done that way. And as my people, I am inviting you to be a reflection of my generosity, hospitality, and abundance. So among the words that Moses is given to share with the people as they prepare to enter this land, and again, we're still trying to enter that land, aren't we? We're just constantly on that pilgrimage to this land of promise, always seeking to channel our better angels and to reflect a new way of being together as neighbors and friends and enemies, right? So, and this is from Vicky's. I just saw it on Facebook and thought it was most appropriate for today. Because the directions to the people include, most importantly, their relationship to the land and how that relationship is also a source of understanding generosity and being generous. So I invite you now to read the bold. God is bringing you into a good land, a land of flowing streams and springs, of wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, olive trees and honey. You shall eat your fill and bless God for the good land that has been given to you. Take care that you do not forget the one who brought you out of the house of bondage and who led you through the great and terrible wilderness. Remember. Who fed you with manna in the desert, that you might learn that it is not by bread alone that we live, but by the generosity of the giver. We give thanks for the faithfulness of those before us and for the wisdom that teaches us that enough is enough. Do not say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gotten me this wealth. But remember the giver of life, for it is she who gives you strength to live and to flourish. Remember and give thanks for the land and its harvest, for peace where war has ravaged the soil, and for a table of belonging where all may feast. We will bless the giver of the land, share the fruits of our labor, and live as one people in gratitude and grace. Somebody is doing that. Is it on?
Is it song time? I guess that means it's song time. You've probably heard this one before, and you can sing along on the chorus. Please help me out. It's early to. Here we are. Inch by inch, row by row, I'm gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low. Gonna make this fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down. Pulling weeds, picking stones, we are made of dreams and bones. I need a place to call my own, for the time is close at hand. Drain for grain, sun and rain, find my way in nature's chain. Tune my body and my brain to the music of the land. Inch by inch, row by row, I'm gonna make this garden grow. I'm gonna mulch it deep and low. I'm gonna make this fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down. We'll plant your rows, short or long, seasoned by a prayer and a song. Mother Earth will keep us strong if we give her loving care. Old crow watches from a tree, he's got his hungry eye on me. In my garden I'm as free as that feathered thief up there. Well, inch by inch, row by row, I'm gonna make this garden grow. I'm gonna mulch it deep and low. I'm gonna make this fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please keep these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down.
So about a month ago, I thought it's not enough for a theologian to talk about seasons of seed time and harvest. We need to have somebody speak to that who is immersed 12 months of the year through those seasons of seed time and harvest. And our lives are enriched here by several people who grow a significant amount of food. But I have asked Robin Riley now to come up, and I said, I think you need to be the one to help think us through what it means to be people who depend on those seasons. And those are his shoes right there. So do you want me to, or would you like, I can go.
Morning. So thinking about Thanksgiving, you know, the thing we focus on first is just being thankful for all the ways that we get the food we get. And that means thanking the farmers, thanking the people who breed seeds and save seeds, thanking the truckers who move stuff from one place to another so we get to eat it. But also then we should also be thankful for the pollinators that make things fruit, or the worms that decompose things and allow nutrients to cycle. We should be thankful for all those kind of things, and they're all responsible for bringing us food. When Lynn asked me this about a month ago, though, I was a bit perplexed. What am I going to talk about? And for the last month, I've really just been banging it around in my head, thinking about different topics. And I'll walk through those. They don't all connect perfectly, but they're just random thoughts I've had on this theme. But the first thing I was just, thinking is, of course, all cultures, particularly cultures that live in a seasonal world, have a harvest celebration. You know, a time when things are winding down, fall's coming, you pull everything in and get ready for winter, and you do a celebration. That's pretty constant. But certainly the strongest story we have about that, or at least the strongest cultural myth, is that, the American one. And that is the idea that there were English colonists settling in Massachusetts, and they probably brought with them all sorts of seeds and things that grew well in Europe. And there they are having sort of a failed harvest. Things are looking pretty grim. Winter's coming. They're contemplating starvation. And lo and behold, the Wampanoag Aboriginal people of that Cape Cod area arrive and bring them food. And what do they bring them? They bring them things from the New World. They bring them meats, so, fish and deer, and particularly turkeys, which didn't exist in Europe. And so our Thanksgiving turkey, in a way, comes from that. They also brought various vegetables. They would have brought corn. They would have brought beans. They would have brought squash. Those are all, the things that were in the New World weren't from the Old World and grew well. And so the story, perhaps the myth, is that they all sat down to a table and had a big feast and lived happily ever after. The question that I have in my propensity to what I like to eat is always the question that I don't think is ever mentioned anywhere, but that's the question of, well, what did they have for dessert? And so I have a theory, but I'm pretty sure it's true. And I for my theory, you have to remember that things like apples, peaches, apricots, pears, those are all things from the Old World. They didn't none of those were in North America natively. So what was the thing that they would have had for dessert? Well, I have a theory. I present to you the exotic pawpaw. As in these pictures. There they are. This is North America's largest native fruit. Seeds of it are found in the fossilized dung of mastodons. It came from the Ohio Valley and probably was spread by First Nations, eating the best ones, taking the largest ones, the most flavorful, saving the seeds, planting them, and slowly moved out of the Ohio Valley across all of eastern North America. So it really is the probable, and it's sweet and it's fruit-like and one thing or another. I'll come back to that, talk a little bit more about them, but now is one of those places where my head went on a weird digression that you'll have to just tolerate me to work through. So I was thinking about that whole, sitting down, the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag, and thinking, how'd that work out for the Wampanoag? Not so good. And so how do we, what do we deal with that today? How do we kind of rationalize that whole meeting of cultures and sharing and goodwill, and then sort of what happens subsequently? And of course, one of the ways we work with that modern times is we have land acknowledgements. And, a dozen times a year I'll be at something where there's a land acknowledgement. And essentially a land acknowledgement is saying we appreciate the people that lived here in the earlier times. We appreciate what they did with the land. We appreciate how they worked with the environment. And we acknowledge that traditional and original use. And in part, it's about guilt, and in part, it's about apologizing, and in part, it's about wishing it could have been otherwise. And finally, it's in part about sort of, I think this is where we pat ourselves on the back. It's a little bit of, yeah, we get it, and we wouldn't have done that. We would be different ourselves. We'd be more thoughtful about culture and about land and about occupation and stuff. So I'm thinking back about that, and I'm thinking, when I think about the people that were like 200 years ago who kind of went down the street that led to some difficulties for First Nations, sure, there were people who were callous, who were evil, who were trying to steal land, who were killing people, who were manipulating the situation. Personally, I think that was probably a fairly small group. There were also people who thought they were doing good things. They were trying to save souls. They were trying to help people transition into what they perceived as a more successful and helpful modern civilization. But probably the majority of people were people who just really didn't think about it a whole lot because they were getting on with their busy lives. So that's what I was thinking when I was imagining where that scene goes. And then I was thinking, so how about myself? Where do I sit with that kind of thing today in terms of land acknowledgements and being grateful for people that came before me? And I had two different images. The first one is I'm imagining this room filled with people from Prince Edward County who sort of are loyalist settler stock, the people who cleared the forests and repaired the farms and all that kind of stuff. And what would my land acknowledgement be for them? Well, I would have to have one, frankly, because in part, I came here, a dozen years or so ago, and I suspect many of you fall into the same category. By virtue of education and skills and money, we're able to buy property and get established and one thing or another. And by virtue of that, we raise property values and we build fancy houses and those kind of things. And for a lot of those people, I think that were here originally, those settler types, they would be living in more modest houses, or they would have to leave the county because they couldn't afford to pay rents. They would move to, Belleville or Deseronto or somewhere or other. And in a way, we could almost be a land acknowledgement saying, yeah, that's a sad story. And it's kind of unfortunate how that played out. So that is a kind of sad sort of thing when you reflect on that we do have to do land acknowledgements now for our current situation, and we're not all that maybe better than those people who we sort of look back on and think, oh, we have wisdom that they didn't. And then finally, the other image I came to is, and I was thinking about climate change, which I think about a lot. Imagine this room full of people from Bangladesh or from many of the Polynesian islands of the South Pacific, whole countries that are disappearing underwater as the ice melts and as sea levels rise. And what would my land acknowledge, or what would my apology be to them? That yes, I kind of knew driving in our car was a problem and fossil fuel use was a problem, and that was contributing to raising sea levels. And yes, we kind of effectively stole your land and destroyed your culture. Sorry about that. So again, makes me think about those kind of Thanksgiving messages. But anyway, all that's very dark. So let me go back to pawpaws for a sec. So again, this is a fruit, very sweet, a little bit of a kind of vanilla smell, a bit of a mango flavor maybe, a bit of an avocado texture, a bit banana-like. And so an amazing thing. And again, thinking that those Aboriginal peoples would have spread this around eastern North America. And actually, it isn't native to here. It gets to be sort of Niagara. That's about as far north as it naturally would have been. Like when you get maps of where the range of pawpaws are, they don't get quite to here. But again, with climate change, it's a little warmer now. You can actually grow pawpaws here now. And so there's some pictures here, Lynn. How do I do that again? That's a bowl of them picked here. Maybe I'll just get you to press the screen just to do the things. So yeah, there's what the plant looks like. It's not a huge tree. It's a kind of, 5 meters high. Grows well in the shade to start with, but as it gets older, it actually likes full sun. It suckers underneath, and so you get more pawpaws coming up from underneath. It gets to be quite thick. And you may not even think you've ever heard of this fruit before, or how it grows, but you will perhaps, some of you recall about way down yonder in the pawpaw patch, burl ives. That's how you get a patch of them because they grow thickly from suckers. And yeah, that's what he was referring to. Okay. And, oops, sorry, go back. How do you go back?
Can you move?
Yeah, I can move.
It's this one, and then we'll go here.
Yeah, so they're kind of pretty. You look through, they grow in groups like that. They're close into the tree. You have to kind of hunt for them. Why, you might ask, do you not see them in stores, or why can I not buy them and stuff like that? The downside of pawpaws, if you will, as a commercial fruit, is they bruise really easily. So once they fall on the ground, they get black within a couple of days, so they don't ship well, they don't store well, but they're great fresh. So that's one of the things. And so as a kind of Thanksgiving thing, and in terms of carrying on in the tradition of those First Nations, spreading this native plant across North America and into our area, I'd like to invite you to partake in that and participate in that. And so, what I have here is enough pawpaws for everyone to take one home, and after you eat them, you can try putting the seeds in the ground. Now, as far as putting the seeds in the ground, just as a sort of gardening tip, they are a kind of seed that requires a cold period, like going through the winter. So if you just leave them on a shelf somewhere and put them in this, they won't grow. Put them in the fridge, leave them in there for a few months, and then come spring, put them in the ground and let them grow. And they'll slowly kind of pop up and turn into pawpaws. It'd probably take about 5 years for them to fruit. I would suggest you take them home and eat them there. They're also a little bit sticky and a bit kind of, goopy. The seeds are kind of large inside, so they're a bit tricky to peel them, slice the sides off, eat them. I'd be interested in hearing from any of you that are at the Thanksgiving dinner later, just what you think the flavor is, because the flavor is fairly complicated. But I'll put those at the back, and again, take one home and peel it open and participate in that same dessert that I think the Pilgrims would have had, and just in a package, just in a sock. It doesn't matter. They have to just dry out and be cold, and then put them in the ground. And Catherine?
I'll make a suggestion on what you could do with them. You could just eat them raw, but they're also very good in smoothies. So if you're stuck thinking, what do I do with this? They're nice.
Yeah. Anyway, so that takes you back to the U.S. original Thanksgiving event, and you can imagine that you're having dinner or dessert with the Pilgrims. Thank you.
This event was quite fun, and I think it all worked out, and you are invited to join in the chorus of this one.
Loud. I didn't turn it off.
I know. Can you turn it up?
It's on.
Why we're not hearing it?
They turned it on now. Test 1, 2. Thank you very much. Take 2. Well, dusty old farmer, well, out working your fields, hanging down over your tractor wheel. The sun beating down turned the red paint to orange, rusty old patches of steel. There's no farmer songs on that car radio, just hip-hop and Shania Twain. Well, here is my way to say thanks for the meal, and I hope there's no shortage of rain. Well, straw hats and old dirty hankies, well, mopping your face like a shoe. Well, thanks for the meal, here's a song that is real, from the kid from the city to you. Straw hats and old dirty hankies, well, mopping your face like a shoe. Well, thanks for the meal, here's a song that is real, from the kid from the city to you. Big corporations gang up and take most of the bread. I know things ain't like they used to be. Your kids are out chasing the American dream, and they're working in big factories. Well, if I come by when you're out in the sun, would you wave at me just like a friend? 'Cause these days when everyone's taking so much, you're somebody giving back in. Hats and old dirty hankies, well, mopping your face like a shoe. Well, thanks for the meal, here's a song that is real, from the kid from the city to you. Straw hats and old dirty hankies, well, mopping your face like a shoe. Thanks for the meal, here's a song that is real, from the kid from the city to you. Yodelay, yodelay, yodelay.
So at this time of our service, I usually share a story of how we as a circle of friends seek to live out of this ancient sacred vision. And normally it's, I could tell you about, Friday that Reaching for Rainbows hosted the Day of the Girl in this space. And it was quite marvelous because Emerald was here from Tyendinaga, and she is a seed saver. And she and her 2 children made a presentation on that day. And Jess was also here from Tyendinaga, and she is a drummer and a singer. So again, the day was about providing models for the young girls in Reaching for Rainbows of women who are strong and generous and wise. But I'm going to tell you about another woman who is strong and generous and wise. I have the privilege sometimes of hearing stories of people, particularly if they're too old to come out for service or maybe infirmed. But Ruth Crawford, who showed up about a month ago, and I introduced her as the person who she and her husband were responsible for funding the Labyrinth. And Ruth has now moved into a time of palliative care. So she's still at MLP, but knows that this is the final season of her life. And so I spent some time with her the other day, and I asked her this question. I said, Ruth, at the age of 91, if you could go back to any 5 minutes in your life, where would you go? And what she said just blew my mind. So she said, well, Lynn, I'd be flying a small plane over Jamaica. Now, I know a lot about Ruth. I know her story. I know her story of, well, I won't get into any of those. And he went, I'm sorry, Ruth, you fly? Well, yes, I do. Well, that's amazing. I said, could I video you telling that story so we would have it as part of our collection of stories? So I said, so Ruth, question again. What 5 minutes would you like to go back to? It was changed this time. She said, I would be flying over Rice Lake, and I would be looking down onto a boardwalk that had been submerged by the water. And then I said, and can you talk about Jamaica? Sure. I'd be flying over Jamaica as well. And I said, well, how old were you? She goes, not quite 40. And I said, but you had kids. Who does anything like that when they have kids? And she goes, well, we had help. And I thought, right, your husband was transferred to Jamaica by the bank, so you had some help for your children, which enabled you to get flying lessons. So there you are. Every single one of us has these most marvelous stories, and we are committed now. We are in a season of committing to collecting these stories of the circle of friends and the circles around us, because that's what we are. We are only the sum of the people in the room, and we are here experiencing the grace and generosity and wisdom of one another as a means of experiencing that sacred mystery. So, isn't that a wonderful story? And then I reminded her again about the Labyrinth. And it's interesting because she's begun to lose a lot of her memory. But she said, well, Lynn, I was eavesdropping. That's not the word. Eavesdropping. She goes, I was eavesdropping. So she used to attend the 4 yearly rituals of the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes. And this would, I think, have been in 2014. And I was, sharing with people what our plans were here to put a labyrinth on our property. And she overheard that. And she herself had a real love of Celtic wisdom and rituals that honor the earth. And so she, at that point, overhearing that conversation, asked, well, how much do you think that will cost you? $5,000. And I got a phone call from her the next day asking if I would go and pick up a check. So, again, these wonderful stories of people who have been part of our circle of friends in so many different ways. It's a privilege to share them, and be prepared to share yours as well. All right. So just a number of announcements, actually. I put